So in today's gospel, Jesus teaches his disciples that whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all. To illustrate what he means, he takes a small child in his arms and says that whoever receives a child in this way is really receiving God. Now, as we listen to such a statement, we naturally bring our own 21st century American mental constructs to the word child. Ours is a culture that worships youth. Many American families' lives revolve around children, driving them from one enriching opportunity to another, inflating their grades, scheduling play dates for them, supervising and pushing and coddling them to a remarkable degree. And I stand guilty as charged on this myself with my own kids. And thanks in part to Hollywood and Victorian literature, our perception of childhood often carries a kind of a sentimental haze, like the blurry lens that they put on cameras to make photos more romantic. But the culture of the ancient Near East took a much more severe view of children. At that time and place, rather than occupying the cherished role that they do in our culture, children were in many ways the lowest and least on the social totem pole. As the New Jerome Biblical Commentary puts it, quote, "The child is not so much a symbol of innocence or humility as someone without legal status and therefore helpless. The child can do nothing for the disciple. To receive a child is to perform a good act for an insignificant person without hope of earthly reward," end quote. To perform a good act for an insignificant person without hope of earthly reward. Old age, on the other hand, in that time and place, brought heightened respect. To be old was to be blessed by God in years and revered by your juniors for your wisdom, experience, and memory. The Old Testament reports that certain patriarchs lived into their hundreds, not to make a statement of fact, but as a metaphorical way to indicate their greatness and divine favor. And it's no accident that the fifth commandment is to honor one's parents, and that the law prescribes death to those who fail to do so, but includes no parallel protections for children. So in many ways, our cultural understandings today reverse those of the ancient Near East. We live in a world where 16-year-olds are pop stars and world-famous athletes. And culturally speaking, 80-year-olds are often viewed as outdated and irrelevant. We devote hours of attention and miles of travel to the agendas of our kids, and we struggle to figure out where and how to warehouse our elderly. Really, the class of people in our era who are most like children in Jesus's are not actually children, but those on the other end of life's journey. Those of us in what Shakespeare so aptly called our second childishness, sliding back into the state of dependence through which we first traveled into adulthood. It is the elderly and infirm who are in many ways lowest and least in contemporary America. In many ways, it is those at the end of life whom Jesus calls us to receive and to serve in his name in today's reading. For to do that is truly to perform a good act for an insignificant person without hope of earthly reward. Early on in my ministry at my first church, I went to an event for clergy at a local assisted living center. They were dedicating a chapel in their newly built memory support center. At one point during the dedication, the CEO of the center, a woman named Denise Rabideau, told a story about why this memory support center was so important to her. She had gone through the loss of her own mother to dementia. It got to the point, she said, when her mother no longer recognized her when she'd come to visit. "Who are you?" she'd ask. "What are you doing in my room?" The mother was perpetually surprised by the presence of this person who had once emerged from her body, but whom she could not now distinguish from a stranger. And yet, as painful as that was to experience, Rabideau kept coming back. She came back without hope of earthly reward, so to speak. She made her daily visit, maybe even sometimes wondering what was the point of the gesture, since it was painful for her and didn't seem to matter one way or the other to her mother. Then one day, her mother looked up at her with her usual confused expression, shrugged, and said, "Well, I don't know who you are, but you're here all the time, so I guess I must love you." You're here all the time. Though I don't recognize you, you've made a space in your day to visit me. You've gone out of your way to receive me. And whoever does that receives not just me, but Jesus and the one who sent him. So I guess I must love you. Amen.